For more on this, let's bring in Robert Charles. He is a former Assistant Secretary of State to Colin Powell. He was a former staffer to Presidents Reagan and George H.W. Bush. I don't know which part of that whole story is most disturbing. I mean, maybe it's the pictures of the ICBM launching and attacking Florida.
Yeah, so let's unfold or unpack this story. In many ways, this is a typical diplomatic ouster sort of spy spat, and these are usually very intense, and they last a very short period of time, and in a year's time, a lot of these people are back where they were in the first place, or they are replaced. The context is very important, and I think what we know about Putin is that he's a bad actor. He's a former KGB agent who's acting just like his pedigree, and he's pushing the envelope wherever he can do it. The United States, however, and this is a very important, subtle but important message, the United States and the Allies acted in a uniform and in some ways unprecedented way in expelling 150 diplomats overnight, all at the same time in 24 countries. And what does that really mean? It means that if Putin tries anything in the Baltic or again in Ukraine or pushes the envelope somewhere else, NATO will respond under Article 5 with unity. They will be unequivocal in the way that they respond, and they will be quick. And so the message back on that is sit down and absorb the fact that there is unity in the Western alliance.
Do you think it really means that? Because that would be great. But, you know, sometimes you worry that we're super tough and there's not necessarily, you know, allies that back us up, although I guess this was an attack on UK soil.
Yeah, I mean, I think NATO has gone through a bit of growing or regrowing pains at the beginning of the Trump administration, but this shows absolute unity. And I want to go back to your point about the launch.
Yes.
A couple facts to understand here. First, a launch of this kind of an ICBM is something that takes at least 2 months to plan. So this had nothing to do with this tit for tat on spies. It was a launch that obviously was in the books for a while, planned. Secondly, after the New START treaty, which actually triggered earlier this year, what's happened is that instead of competition between these two countries, ours and theirs in numbers, we are competing in terms of quality of launch weapons. And so what you're looking at here in many ways is his statement that they're still in the game. You know, Russia's economy tanked. It came up a little last year, but this is a country with ICBMs and oil and not a whole lot else to speak for it. So I think that, you know, in context, you have to keep everything at a pitch that's below a dull roar. I don't think this is a panicked moment. What I think it means is that we have to be unified in alerting Putin and reminding him that we are a unified alliance. And who's he picking for his friends? Iran, where he seems at least indifferent to their development of nuclear weapons. Maybe he's helping them. Syria, where you know, the long pole in the tent is Assad, that he supported. And he even signed an agreement in 2000 with North Korea. So, you know, we know, I guess we're known by our friends, and our allies are pretty strong, pretty solid, and pretty democratic. And this Putin is no man of democracy and no moral leader.
According to a report from NBC News, I don't know if you saw this, that President Trump told Vladimir Putin, quote, if you want to have an arms race, we can do that, but I'll win. And apparently he was talking about this funding that just went through here in the U.S. First of all, do you believe that report? And what does it mean to you?
You know, there's a lot of superficial dialogue that goes on sort of mano a mano here in the current administration, which I don't think is inaccurate. I just think it's sort of noise above the detailed work that's going on below the surface.
Because he gets criticized for not talking tough enough to Vladimir Putin, and that sounds pretty tough if it's true.
Oh, I think, look, I think our geopolitical situation is such that we understand very well who our enemies are. I think we're on guard relative to the coming election cycle. I think we are developing our own ballistic missile defenses. We're developing our own ballistic missile modernization efforts. And to me, it is in some ways just a recognition that the president understands the score and the stakes, and he's got good people around him, Jim Mattis, John Kelly, hopefully soon Mr. Pompeo. You know, we're in good shape, but you have to be on guard with the sort of neo-Soviet thinking that comes out of Putin, and I think we are on guard.
Yeah, when a bully leader stands in front of a screen and he plays a video of a weapon, I always kind of wonder a little bit about how overblown it is, and you know, we don't know much about this video. Do we know that this really happened? Do we know that they say it was very successful? You know, that the bragging always gives me a little pause.
Yeah, we know a few things. First, Putin often doesn't tell the truth. Secondly, we know that there is a modernization effort ongoing. I think we also recognize, or should recognize, that this is a moment in time when being provoked is probably not the right answer. We should be the calm one in the room, the adult, and we should migrate public diplomacy and private diplomacy toward finding sources of agreement. Just remember, 9 days ago, the Soviet Soyuz went up with 2 American astronauts on it. There are things we cooperate on, and I think we ought to migrate the discussion that way. Give Putin a little bit of room to understand that we're not going to take, we're not going to allow him to do anything that's outside the bounds of international law. But at the same time, you know, there's room for dialogue. I think Trump's message was a good message. In a way, it was a little blunt, but we've got great people, including, again, Jim Mattis and John Kelly, clearly demonstrating, soon John Bolton, demonstrating that American resolve is and always will be clear and unmovable.
You know, that's a great point. We have people who went up on their vessel. They're hosting the World Cup, and then Vladimir Putin is standing in front of a video screen where he's showing his missile hitting Florida. It's all very disconcerting. Robert Charles, thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time.